Bienvenue pour dîner.
Excuse me, it's not your business.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
A Working Man begins by introducing Levon Cade, a former elite soldier whose life has been defined by combat, strategy, and moral complexity. Having left behind the battlefield, Levon now works as a construction foreman, a man grounded in routine and disciplined labor. Despite his quiet life, there are moments where the past surfaces in subtle ways, reflective glances, restrained reactions, and quiet self-discipline that hints at a capacity for violence he keeps suppressed. His home life, particularly his relationship with his daughter Mary, is central to the narrative, providing both motivation and emotional grounding. Levon's desire to maintain normalcy is constantly juxtaposed with the skills and instincts that define his former self, creating an undercurrent of tension that the film sustains throughout. Levon's professional life is closely intertwined with Joe Garcia, the owner of the construction company for which he works. Joe is depicted as a principled, kind-hearted man who values loyalty, integrity, and hard work. His daughter, Jenny Garcia, is introduced as an intelligent, spirited young woman who forms a unique bond with Levon. This bond is not romantic but deeply protective, highlighting Levon's instinct to safeguard those unable to defend themselves. The narrative invests in establishing this relationship early, ensuring the audience understands why Levon's reaction to her disappearance will be both immediate and unyielding. The plot is catalyzed by the kidnapping of Jenny, an event that shatters Levon's fragile equilibrium and forces him to confront the violent world he has sought to leave behind. Jenny's abduction is orchestrated by a human trafficking network with multiple layers of hierarchy, illustrating a sophisticated and far-reaching criminal enterprise. The network operates with precision, utilizing intermediaries and enforcers, and their reach extends beyond immediate geography. Levon's response is methodical. He surveys the situation, maps the hierarchy, and determines the most efficient and strategic approach to rescuing Jenny. The narrative emphasizes both his intellectual acumen and his moral clarity, showing a man who combines tactical skill with deep ethical conviction. As Levon delves into the underworld, he encounters a range of antagonists, each representing different facets of organized crime. Some are foot soldiers, tasked with enforcing orders with brutal efficiency. Others occupy higher levels, manipulating systems for financial gain and protection against law enforcement. These encounters are layered and nuanced, creating tension not just through physical confrontation but also through strategic planning, deception, and anticipation of opponents' moves. Levon's interventions are carefully calculated, balancing effectiveness with the protection of innocent lives, reflecting a central theme of the film, that violence, when necessary, must be employed with ethical and tactical discernment. Throughout the narrative, Levon's internal conflict is explored through introspection and dialogue. Flashbacks reveal elements of his past experiences in combat and clandestine operations, providing context for his current behavior and reinforcing the moral complexities of his character. Moments with his daughter Mary punctuate the narrative, highlighting his desire to shield her from harm and ensure her future remains secure. These scenes also serve to humanize Levon, contrasting the strategic, mission-focused aspects of his life with tenderness and emotional vulnerability. This duality is a key narrative device, allowing the audience to empathize with a character whose external competence and internal reflection coexist in tension. As Levon progresses through his mission, the narrative introduces a series of escalating challenges. He infiltrates safe houses, observes traffickers' routines, and coordinates interventions that require precision timing and rapid adaptation. The story emphasizes unpredictability. Plans often encounter unforeseen obstacles, and Levon must adjust tactics in real time. These sequences maintain suspense, highlighting both physical and cognitive skill. The film avoids gratuitous graphic detail, instead focusing on strategy, stakes, and ethical choices, illustrating that intelligence and judgment are as crucial as physical capability in navigating dangerous situations. Secondary characters contribute significantly to both tension and thematic depth. Joe Garcia represents moral stability and the value of loyalty, while Jenny embodies vulnerability and the stakes of ethical action. Additional figures in the criminal network serve as catalysts for plot development, demonstrating the consequences of corruption, exploitation, and the abuse of power. The interplay between these characters creates a web of moral and strategic considerations, reinforcing the film's exploration of justice, responsibility, and personal cost. The climax is carefully constructed to emphasize Levon's skill, planning, and ethical decision-making. Confrontations are multi-layered, requiring simultaneous attention to protecting Jenny, neutralizing threats, and minimizing collateral damage. The narrative structure allows for tension and suspense to build while showcasing Levon's ability to synthesize information, anticipate opponent moves, and act decisively. Resolution comes with success tempered by cost. While Jenny is rescued, Levon is left with the physical and emotional consequences of his intervention, reinforcing the film's central theme that moral courage and decisive action are accompanied by personal sacrifice. Production-wise, A Working Man is directed by David Ayer with a screenplay co-written by Ayer and Sylvester Stallone. The film emphasizes realism in both setting and character depiction. The construction environment, cityscapes, and interiors of criminal safe houses are crafted to convey authenticity, while cinematography and lighting underscore tension and mood. Editing choices maintain rhythm, often juxtaposing quieter, reflective moments with sequences of heightened strategy and action. This stylistic approach reinforces narrative themes of duality, responsibility, and the intersection of ordinary life with extraordinary circumstances. Critical reception was mixed but leaned positive among audiences. Reviewers consistently praised the lead performance for its intensity and authenticity, noting the depth brought to a character balancing responsibility, moral clarity, and latent capacity for action. Dialogue and secondary character development received some criticism, particularly regarding exposition and reliance on conventional tropes, but thematic engagement with ethics, loyalty, and moral complexity was generally recognized as a strength. Box office performance confirmed commercial success, with the film performing well relative to its production budget and generating a positive response from viewers who appreciate character-driven action and strategic problem-solving narratives. Thematically, A Working Man examines the tension between personal desire for a peaceful existence and the ethical obligations imposed by circumstance. Levon's journey illustrates that heroism is defined not by physical prowess alone but by moral courage, foresight, and the willingness to confront injustice at personal cost. The film emphasizes that ordinary individuals can embody extraordinary virtue when circumstances demand decisive action. The narrative consistently juxtaposes Levon's ordinary labor with moments requiring strategic brilliance, highlighting the symbolic significance of the working man as both everyman and hero. Character arcs are deeply explored through the interplay of action and reflection. Levon evolves in response to challenges, demonstrating growth in judgment, empathy, and moral clarity. Secondary characters reinforce thematic exploration. Joe Garcia exemplifies loyalty and ethical integrity, while Jenny serves as a moral touchstone and the impetus for Levon's engagement with the criminal world. Even antagonists are given subtle motivations, illustrating that the criminal landscape is complex and multifaceted. These dynamics provide depth, tension, and resonance throughout the narrative. The narrative also explores the consequences of intervention. Success is rarely unqualified. Each act of protection or justice carries personal, ethical, or emotional cost. The story emphasizes that action, while morally necessary, often leaves residual burdens, shaping character development and reinforcing the weight of responsibility. The film encourages reflection on how ordinary individuals navigate extraordinary moral and strategic challenges, examining the interplay between personal desire, ethical obligation, and social responsibility. A Working Man ultimately delivers a narrative that is both engaging and reflective. By combining suspense, strategic action, and character-driven development, the film offers viewers a layered experience. It examines ethical dilemmas, the human cost of violence, and the enduring importance of loyalty and moral responsibility. The story of Levon Cade resonates because it presents a man defined not only by skill or experience but by his commitment to acting with integrity, protecting the vulnerable, and accepting the consequences of difficult decisions. The film's conclusion leaves audiences with a nuanced understanding of heroism, emphasizing that courage, intelligence, and moral clarity define true action even in the face of persistent danger and uncertainty. Through its detailed portrayal of strategy, planning, and ethical decision-making, the film encourages engagement with questions about justice, responsibility, and the nature of courage. The juxtaposition of ordinary life and extraordinary challenge reinforces the thematic tension that drives Levon's journey, and the audience is left to reflect on the personal cost of moral action and the enduring relevance of loyalty, ethical judgment, and personal courage. A Working Man thus succeeds in offering both thrilling narrative momentum and contemplative engagement with character, ethics, and consequence, making it a multifaceted action thriller that resonates beyond the immediate stakes of the plot. While Levon Cade dominates the narrative, the supporting characters play essential roles in shaping both the story and its thematic resonance. Joe Garcia, portrayed by Michael Pena, serves as the moral center and emotional anchor of the film. His unwavering concern for his daughter and his integrity amid chaos contrast with Levon's past and highlight the stakes of everyday morality in a world riddled with corruption. Joe is more than a passive figure waiting for rescue. His decision-making, ethical guidance, and emotional honesty frame Levon's actions within a human context. Scenes depicting Joe's anxious attempts to locate his daughter, his protective instincts, and his interactions with Levon illuminate the themes of loyalty, trust, and moral responsibility. Joe's character underscores the narrative's message that courage is not limited to physical prowess but also involves steadfast ethical action and emotional resilience. David Harbour's supporting role adds complexity to the antagonistic force. Harbour's character is not a mere villain, he embodies shades of gray that humanize the criminal network. His portrayal conveys a sense of calculated professionalism, internal conflict, and occasional doubt. The film presents him in moments that reveal strategic thinking and subtle moral hesitation, providing a foil to Levon's direct and principled approach. By exploring Harbour's character in nuanced ways, through dialogue, brief reflective moments, and interactions with subordinates, the filmmakers emphasize that even within a morally corrupt system, individual agency and personal ethics remain consequential. This attention to character depth elevates the narrative beyond standard action tropes. Jason Flemyng's portrayal of the criminal mastermind functions as both a narrative and thematic counterweight to Levon. Flemyng's character embodies intellect, manipulation, and ethical cynicism. His interactions with Levon challenge the protagonist not only physically but philosophically, forcing Levon to confront broader questions about justice, collateral consequences, and systemic corruption. The tension between Levon and Flemyng is heightened through carefully constructed dialogue, slow-motion confrontations, and cinematographic emphasis on eye contact, body language, and spatial dynamics. The climactic interplay between physical action and ideological conflict reinforces the film's central thematic concern. Morality is tested not only through individual courage but also in navigating systems designed to exploit human weakness. The kidnapped daughter, though a secondary character, is pivotal to the emotional depth of the story. She is portrayed as intelligent, resilient, and resourceful, avoiding the common trope of a helpless victim. Her interactions with Levon, even in limited communication, establish mutual trust, empathy, and hope. Subtle narrative techniques, such as reaction shots, close-ups of her expressions, and visual parallels between her plight and Levon's past experiences, allow audiences to engage deeply with her perspective. The film uses these moments to amplify suspense and emotional stakes, reminding viewers that the narrative's violence is not gratuitous but morally charged, driven by the urgency to save innocent lives. The thematic underpinnings of A Working Man are intricately woven throughout the narrative, beginning with loyalty. Levon's unwavering commitment to Joe and his daughter demonstrates how loyalty extends beyond familial or professional obligations, encompassing ethical responsibilities and moral courage. This loyalty is tested repeatedly, from his early investigations to confrontations with organized criminals, reinforcing the narrative's emphasis on personal integrity in high-stakes circumstances. The film portrays loyalty not as blind obedience but as an active, conscious choice to uphold justice and protect the vulnerable, thereby elevating Levon's character into a model of moral and physical agency. Redemption is another central theme. Levon's journey from a man attempting to leave violence behind to someone who confronts it again highlights the narrative tension between personal peace and social responsibility. The story frames redemption as both a personal and relational process. Levon seeks not only to atone for past moral compromises but also to protect others from experiencing similar harm. His actions suggest that redemption is achieved through deliberate moral engagement, courage in the face of danger, and alignment of skill with ethical imperatives. Through visual storytelling, interior reflections, physical scars, and lingering close-ups, the film conveys the psychological weight of this redemptive arc, allowing audiences to perceive the internal as well as external consequences of Levon's journey. Justice and moral responsibility are explored through the juxtaposition of Levon's ethical framework with the structural corruption embodied by Fleming and the trafficking network. The narrative repeatedly situates Levon in positions requiring rapid ethical decision-making, whether to prioritize immediate rescue, risk collateral damage, or strategically dismantle the network over time. These scenarios emphasize the moral ambiguity inherent in confronting systemic evil, highlighting the complex interplay between individual action and broader societal consequences. By framing violence as a morally necessary, calculated response to injustice, the film differentiates itself from action movies that depict conflict purely for spectacle, reinforcing its ethical and thematic sophistication. Cinematically, these themes are reinforced through visual and auditory techniques. Lighting contrasts, harsh industrial illumination versus warm, domestic light, symbolize the tension between moral darkness and human warmth. Camera angles, low perspectives during confrontations, tight close-ups during emotional scenes, convey both physical intensity and psychological depth. The musical score adapts dynamically, shifting from tense, percussive motifs during action sequences to softer, melodic themes during moments of personal reflection, reinforcing the duality of external conflict and internal struggle. Sound design emphasizes environmental authenticity, using subtle auditory cues to heighten tension, signify danger, and accentuate emotional beats. Supporting minor characters, such as law enforcement contacts, informants, and secondary traffickers, further enrich the thematic landscape. These characters illustrate how personal choice interacts with systemic structures. Some display complicity, others moral courage, and still others ambiguity, creating a realistic and morally complex environment. Through their interactions with Levon, the narrative underscores that ethical action often requires navigation of nuanced social dynamics rather than simple heroism. The audience is encouraged to consider the consequences of moral and immoral choices across multiple levels, from individual to systemic. As the story reaches its climax, Levon Cade faces the culmination of his painstaking planning, intelligence gathering, and tactical execution. The final confrontation with the human trafficking ring is not simply a battle of brute strength, but a multidimensional test of strategy, agility, and psychological resilience. Levon moves through a sprawling industrial complex, carefully navigating security measures, surveillance cameras, and multiple armed adversaries. The filmmakers use a combination of tight, claustrophobic shots and sweeping panoramic views to emphasize both the immediate danger and the scale of the threat. Each step is laden with suspense. The audience experiences Levon's heightened awareness, every sound amplified, every shadow potentially harboring deadly opposition. His approach combines stealth, combat skill, and improvisation, as he turns mundane objects into defensive tools, demonstrating resourcefulness that extends beyond raw power. The antagonists escalate their tactics in response, creating a dynamic, tension-filled environment. Multiple squads of well-trained operatives pursue Levon, forcing him to adapt continuously. The choreography of the combat scenes emphasizes realism, with hand-to-hand combat, precise shooting, and environmental interaction forming the core of the sequences. Levon's movements are deliberate, economical, and deadly, reflecting his years of specialized training. The film balances moments of intense action with brief pauses that allow viewers to process the stakes and anticipate his next move. Unlike many action films, A Working Man does not rely on exaggerated, physics-defying stunts. The emphasis is on the credibility of Levon's actions and the consequences of his decisions. Jenny's role during the climax is equally significant. She demonstrates courage, quick thinking, and adaptability, reinforcing her character as an active participant rather than a passive victim. At critical moments, she assists Levon, whether by providing intelligence, distracting adversaries, or exploiting opportunities created by her own observations. These moments heighten narrative tension while emphasizing themes of empowerment, trust, and collaboration. Her relationship with Levon deepens in these sequences, creating a strong emotional anchor amid the chaos. The audience is not only invested in her physical safety but also in her growth and resilience. The final showdown with the ringleader is both intellectually and physically demanding. Levon confronts a villain who matches his intelligence and cunning, turning the conflict into a battle of strategy as well as combat skill. The dialogue exchanged between them underscores moral and ethical contrasts, highlighting Levon's code of honor against the antagonist's self-serving rationale. Every decision carries weight, whether to strike immediately, manipulate the environment, or delay action to protect Jenny. Levon's judgment is continuously tested. These sequences are not just visually compelling, they are psychologically engaging, inviting the audience to consider the consequences of power, choice, and moral responsibility. Once the criminal network is dismantled and Jenny is safely rescued, the film transitions into resolution and reflection. Levon faces the consequences of his actions, both the emotional toll of violence and the moral ramifications of choices that straddle legality and necessity. Scenes depicting quiet contemplation, interaction with Joe Garcia, and moments of self-reflection convey the lingering effects of trauma and the weight of responsibility. The filmmakers intentionally focus on these quieter sequences to provide balance, allowing the audience to absorb the narrative's thematic complexity and the character's development. The resolution is not about triumphal heroism alone, but about ethical navigation, moral compromise, and the ongoing struggle to reconcile past and present selves. In parallel, the film's technical execution enhances its storytelling. Cinematographer Robert Elswit uses dynamic lighting, framing, and camera movement to underscore tension and emphasize character perspective. Close-ups highlight Levon's expressions, revealing internal conflict and focus, while wider shots convey scale and danger. The editing, overseen by Fred Raskin, maintains rhythm and pacing, balancing rapid action sequences with slower, reflective moments. The musical score, composed by Lorne Balfe, amplifies suspense, emotional resonance, and narrative intensity without overpowering the visuals, contributing to an immersive cinematic experience. Production design and costume choices support realism, grounding the story in a believable urban environment while reflecting the characters' personalities and social contexts. Thematically, the film emphasizes the interplay between morality, duty, and personal responsibility. Levon's journey underscores that true heroism involves more than skill, it requires judgment, ethical discernment, and resilience. Actions have consequences, and the world is morally complex, with no simple division between right and wrong. The narrative consistently reinforces these themes through character interaction, plot progression, and conflict resolution. Viewers are invited to consider the broader implications of violence, the responsibilities inherent in power, and the courage required to act under pressure. Critically, A Working Man received mixed reviews. Review aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes reported an approval rating of approximately 47%, with critics praising Jason Statham's performance, the realistic action sequences, and the moral complexity of the story, while some noted that the plot occasionally relies on familiar revenge thriller tropes. Metacritic scored the film around 52 out of 100, reflecting a combination of praise for execution and critique of narrative predictability. Audience response has generally been more favorable, particularly among fans of action thrillers who appreciate the film's blend of physical spectacle, suspense, and ethical reflection. Viewers frequently highlight the balance of action and character development as a strength, noting that Levon's internal conflict adds depth to the otherwise high-octane narrative. From a cultural perspective, the film engages with contemporary concerns about human trafficking, systemic corruption, and moral accountability. By portraying criminals as multidimensional and situating violence within a complex ethical landscape, A Working Man invites discussion on responsibility, justice, and the use of force. These elements elevate the story beyond a simple revenge plot, engaging audiences in reflection on the moral dilemmas faced by individuals operating in dangerous, morally ambiguous environments. Behind the scenes, production insights reveal deliberate choices that shaped the film's tone and realism. Director David Ayer emphasized authenticity, opting for practical stunts, realistic combat choreography, and immersive location shooting to create a visceral experience. Casting decisions, particularly the selection of Jason Statham and Michael Pena, were influenced by their ability to embody physicality, emotional depth, and the moral nuance required by the story. Costume, set design, and props were carefully curated to reflect both the urban setting and the characters' personal histories, contributing to the film's believability. Marketing efforts highlighted the collaboration between Statham and Ayer, using the trailer and promotional materials to showcase both action sequences and thematic depth, drawing audiences interested in thoughtful, high-energy thrillers. In conclusion, A Working Man stands out as an action thriller that successfully integrates intense combat, strategic intelligence, psychological depth, and moral exploration. The film presents a protagonist whose skills, judgment, and ethical code drive the narrative, creating tension, suspense, and emotional resonance. By combining meticulous cinematography, careful editing, immersive production design, and a compelling musical score, the filmmakers craft an experience that is both viscerally thrilling and intellectually engaging. While critical opinions are mixed, audience appreciation underscores the effectiveness of balancing action, suspense, and thematic depth. The movie ultimately leaves viewers contemplating the cost of violence, the responsibilities inherent in power, and the courage required to navigate moral complexities in a dangerous world, making it a significant entry in contemporary action cinema. As the narrative approaches its climax, Levon Cade meticulously prepares for the final confrontation with Victor Kane and the inner circle of the trafficking network. The film devotes substantial screen time to strategy and suspense. Levon surveys the compound from multiple vantage points, noting guard rotations, surveillance cameras, and potential entry and escape routes. This phase is marked by high-intensity close-ups, quick cuts, and subdued background music, which creates a tension-filled atmosphere. The audience experiences Levon's cognitive process, emphasizing that this heroism is rooted not just in physical skill but in critical thinking and situational awareness. The compound itself is a testament to the filmmaker's attention to detail. Production design incorporates layered security systems, realistic guard protocols, and architectural complexity, creating a believable environment that tests Levon's abilities. Lighting is carefully orchestrated, areas of deep shadow conceal danger, while sparse pools of light reveal vulnerability. The interplay between light and shadow not only adds visual drama but also symbolizes moral and ethical ambiguity. Levon operates in a world where right and wrong are constantly tested. Levon's infiltration sequence is a masterclass in tension and choreography. Using a combination of stealth, environmental awareness, and improvised tools, he silently neutralizes guards, disarms electronic locks, and navigates complex corridors. Each movement is purposeful, and the cinematography often alternates between wide establishing shots and tight close-ups to emphasize both scale and intensity. Sound design heightens the suspense, muffled footsteps, the hum of security systems, and sudden bursts of ambient noise punctuate Levon's cautious progress. The sequence also provides moments of character introspection. In fleeting close-ups, Levon reflects on the stakes, remembering past missions and the consequences of failure, reinforcing his internal struggle and moral clarity. The eventual confrontation with Victor Kane is both physical and psychological. Kane, portrayed with chilling authority, attempts to manipulate Levon, exploiting his protective instincts toward Jenny and invoking moral dilemmas. Dialogue is sparse but loaded, with Kane taunting Levon about the limitations of individual action against systemic corruption. The fight choreography reflects realism, emphasizing strategic strikes, environmental advantage, and tactical improvisation. Every physical exchange carries emotional weight, representing the clash between moral courage and calculated evil. Levon's eventual triumph is not only physical but symbolic. He restores a measure of justice, rescues the victims, and asserts ethical agency in a morally complex world. Jenny Garcia's rescue is depicted with both urgency and emotional resonance. The camera captures her fear, resilience, and eventual relief, using tight framing and controlled lighting to emphasize her vulnerability and Levon's role as protector. The reunion with her father, Joe Garcia, is emotionally charged, highlighting gratitude, relief, and the human cost of crime. The film refrains from oversimplified heroism. It acknowledges trauma, the danger endured, and the ongoing consequences of systemic criminality. These moments of closure balance the action-driven climax with emotional depth, reinforcing the film's dual focus on adrenaline and morality. The resolution sequence extends beyond immediate victory. Levon ensures that all rescued victims are safely returned to appropriate care, collaborating with ethical law enforcement officers and social workers like Maria Torres. Scenes depicting rehabilitation and the reintegration of victims into society underscore the film's commitment to realism and human impact. Levon's return to construction work provides narrative closure while symbolizing the persistence of ordinary life amid extraordinary circumstances. He retains vigilance, a reminder that moral responsibility is ongoing, not concluded with a single act of heroism. Secondary characters receive meaningful resolution arcs. Detective Sofia Ramirez continues her work within law enforcement, now benefiting from Levon's intelligence and experience, creating a subtle but significant commentary on the synergy between personal initiative and institutional structures. Alexei, initially presented as morally ambiguous, survives his interactions with Levon and Kane, hinting at personal redemption and the nuanced realities of those caught in criminal hierarchies. These resolutions highlight the film's layered approach to morality, illustrating that heroism, culpability, and ethical complexity coexist. From a production perspective, A Working Man excels in its technical execution. Stunt coordination emphasizes realism, with choreographed combat sequences utilizing practical effects, wire work, and environmental tools. Editing maintains narrative coherence while delivering rapid, tension-filled sequences. Cinematography balances dynamic camera movement with strategically framed shots to convey both scope and immediacy. Lighting differentiates environments, warm tones for safe, personal spaces, cold, muted colors for criminal domains, reinforcing thematic contrasts between security, danger, morality, and threat. Sound design complements visual storytelling, integrating diegetic city noises, punctuated silence during suspense, and musical scoring that underscores emotional beats. Costume design reinforces character identity and narrative tone, contrasting Levon's understated work attire with the calculated menace of Kane's entourage. Thematically, the film is rich with moral, psychological, and societal exploration. Levon Cade embodies the archetype of the ordinary man capable of extraordinary action, demonstrating courage, tactical intelligence, and ethical consistency. The narrative suggests that heroism arises from moral clarity, empathy, and decisive action in the face of systemic corruption. Secondary characters reinforce these themes, portraying resilience, ethical struggle, and the consequences of choices in morally complex circumstances. By juxtaposing Levon's individual heroism with institutional limitations, the film encourages reflection on both personal responsibility and systemic challenges. Critics highlighted the film's strengths in blending realism with cinematic excitement. Jason Statham's performance as Levon Cade received particular praise for its balance of physicality and emotional depth, portraying a character whose internal struggles are as compelling as his external triumphs. The choreography, production design, and cinematography were noted for their realism and attention to detail, providing an immersive experience that distinguishes the film from formulaic action thrillers. Some critiques mentioned familiar genre conventions, such as revenge-driven motivation, but the layered characters, ethical nuance, and grounded approach offered fresh engagement. Audience reception was similarly positive, with particular enthusiasm for the combination of visceral action and moral narrative. Fans noted the film's attention to detail, realistic fight sequences, and the emotional weight of the rescue and resolution. Social media discussions highlighted Levon Cade's archetypal heroism, someone ordinary in occupation yet extraordinary in moral and physical capacity, and the film's engagement with real-world issues such as human trafficking and institutional corruption. Financially, A Working Man performed strongly at the box office. Opening weekend figures were robust, with a steady audience draw in subsequent weeks, reflecting the film's appeal to both action enthusiasts and viewers seeking narrative depth. Its release strategy, combining theatrical distribution with planned streaming access, ensures broad audience engagement and extended cultural impact. Critical, audience, and financial success positions the film as a noteworthy entry in contemporary action cinema, balancing adrenaline-fueled sequences with reflection on moral responsibility. In summary, A Working Man succeeds as a multidimensional action thriller. It integrates visceral action with nuanced storytelling, realistic production design, layered character development, and ethical exploration. Levon Cade's journey is emblematic, a man who navigates the tension between ordinary life and extraordinary demands, guided by moral clarity, skill, and courage. The interplay between primary and secondary characters, combined with meticulous technical execution, thematic depth, and audience engagement, makes the film a standout example of genre storytelling that entertains while prompting reflection on heroism, morality, and the complexities of combating systemic crime. Its blend of realism, moral inquiry, and cinematic craft ensures that A Working Man resonates beyond its immediate narrative, offering a textured exploration of courage, ethics, and human resilience. A Working Man opens with Levon Cade navigating the quiet rhythms of his life as a construction foreman, a man who has intentionally removed himself from the violence and moral compromises of his past. Levon's apartment is modest, functional, and sparsely decorated, reflecting a preference for simplicity and control. His daily routine involves early mornings at construction sites, supervising workers, reviewing plans, and ensuring the structural and procedural integrity of ongoing projects. The film takes care to establish Levon as a man defined by discipline, meticulousness, and a grounded work ethic. From the outset, the audience understands that while he desires normalcy, his past is never fully dormant. His gestures, reactions, and the ease with which he can command physical action hint at a life previously immersed in danger and moral complexity. The narrative uses these quiet sequences not merely as exposition but as a way of building tension, emphasizing the duality of Levon's existence, the outwardly ordinary life juxtaposed with the latent capacity for extraordinary action. Levon's connection to the Garcia family forms the emotional foundation of the story. Joe Garcia, a widower and construction business owner, embodies moral integrity and communal respect. Through Joe, the film conveys values of loyalty, trust, and ethical responsibility. Jenny Garcia, Joe's daughter, is introduced as a young woman whose intelligence, curiosity, and sense of independence draw Levon's protective instincts. Their relationship is not romantic but is deeply characterized by care, mentorship, and moral responsibility. The narrative invests in these relationships early, allowing viewers to understand why Levon's eventual response to her kidnapping is both personal and morally urgent. These early sequences also reveal Levon's interactions with his daughter, Mary, highlighting tenderness and responsibility, and providing grounding moments amidst the broader tension that develops later. The plot escalates when Jenny is kidnapped by a human trafficking network that operates with organizational precision and reach. The film portrays this network as a layered criminal enterprise rather than a collection of individual perpetrators, emphasizing strategy, logistics, and corruption at multiple levels. Levon's response is methodical. He establishes observation points, monitors trafficker movements, and begins piecing together the structure of the network. The narrative emphasizes his analytical approach, showcasing a combination of strategic intelligence, tactical skill, and ethical judgment. Unlike traditional action films, the tension in A Working Man derives as much from Levon's planning and anticipation as it does from physical confrontation. Each choice carries weight, and failure is not an abstract possibility but a tangible threat to Jenny's survival and to Levon's moral integrity. Levon's investigative methods are presented in meticulous detail. He observes routines, gathers intelligence, and identifies weak points within the criminal network. The audience is shown his thought processes, emphasizing the cognitive demands of ethical and strategic action. He sets up communication channels, monitors patterns of behavior, and anticipates contingencies. These sequences emphasize suspense, requiring the viewer to track both Levon's actions and the responses of those he is pursuing. The narrative consistently underscores that Levon's success depends on intelligence, foresight, and adherence to his moral code as much as on physical ability. The structure of these sequences allows for a gradual buildup of tension, highlighting the stakes while also exploring the ethical and psychological dimensions of his intervention. The criminal antagonists are carefully depicted to enhance narrative complexity. Some serve as direct enforcers, carrying out orders with precision, while others are strategists manipulating the network for profit and influence. The film conveys the scale of the threat through layered confrontations, surveillance, and calculated moves, illustrating that Levon must navigate both immediate dangers and systemic challenges. The narrative emphasizes that the criminal network is dynamic, capable of adaptation, and resistant to straightforward intervention. This structural complexity allows the story to explore themes of moral responsibility, strategy, and the limits of individual action within a systemically corrupt environment. In parallel with the external challenges, the narrative delves deeply into Levon's psychological and moral landscape. Flashbacks to past combat experiences and clandestine operations provide context for his skills and ethical framework. These glimpses into his history reveal both the competence and the emotional burden he carries. Moments with his daughter Mary serve to humanize Levon, illustrating that his moral engagement extends beyond abstract principles to the protection of tangible loved ones. This interplay between internal reflection and external action reinforces the film's exploration of moral complexity, personal responsibility, and the consequences of returning to violence even when necessary. Levon's journey progresses through a series of escalating interventions. Each operation he undertakes is presented with careful attention to strategy, timing, and adaptation. He infiltrates locations, anticipates security measures, and identifies vulnerabilities in the traffickers' operations. These sequences highlight the cognitive as well as physical demands of action, reinforcing the theme that morality and skill are inseparable. Every encounter tests his judgment, resilience, and capacity to protect the innocent while confronting dangerous adversaries. The narrative uses these sequences to maintain tension and emphasize that successful intervention requires foresight, courage, and ethical discernment, not brute force alone. The fight choreography in A Working Man is a central feature, carefully designed to reflect Levon Cade's military background, strategic intelligence, and adaptability. Unlike many action films that rely heavily on exaggerated, unrealistic stunts, this movie emphasizes practical combat and plausible physicality. Each fight scene is meticulously staged to balance realism, cinematic flair, and narrative consequence. For example, in the warehouse confrontation with mid-level operatives, Levon's movements are deliberate, leveraging leverage, momentum, and environmental elements. Pipes, crates, scaffolding, and loose chains are employed as both shields and improvised weapons, demonstrating adaptive problem-solving. The choreography avoids unnecessary flourishes, each strike has a clear purpose, whether it is incapacitating an opponent, creating an escape path, or protecting a hostage. This approach grounds the action in credibility while maintaining visual excitement. Camera work plays a crucial role in conveying the intensity and clarity of combat sequences. The filmmakers employ a combination of handheld shots, wide tracking shots, and slow-motion inserts to provide multiple perspectives. Handheld shots bring the audience into the immediacy of the fight, capturing the jostling, sweat, and exertion of Levon and his opponents. Wide shots establish spatial relationships, ensuring the viewer understands the geography of the fight and the positions of adversaries. Slow-motion sequences highlight critical moments, a decisive strike, a sudden dodge, or Levon's strategic improvisation. Editing is precise, with cuts timed to the rhythm of combat, maintaining tension while preventing confusion. The seamless integration of these techniques ensures that action sequences are both thrilling and narratively meaningful, advancing character development as well as plot. Sound design amplifies the visceral impact of these sequences. The auditory landscape blends diegetic and non-diegetic sounds, heightening realism while enhancing dramatic effect. Punches, kicks, and environmental interactions, metal clanging, glass breaking, and machinery groaning, are meticulously layered to convey weight, force, and consequence. Silence is also used strategically, moments of quiet, punctuated by subtle ambient noise, heighten tension and focus attention on Levon's perceptiveness. The soundscape is dynamic, shifting in intensity to match narrative pacing, with quieter sequences emphasizing stealth and investigation, and louder, layered sound design punctuating climactic action moments. The musical score reinforces both tension and emotional depth. Composed to complement the duality of Levon's journey, physical confrontation and moral decision-making, the score oscillates between rhythmic, percussive motifs during combat and softer, more melodic themes during reflective or emotional scenes. Low-frequency tones underscore suspense, while string arrangements or piano motifs evoke introspection, loss, or hope. The score is dynamically integrated with sound design. For instance, the rhythmic percussive elements often synchronize with fight choreography, enhancing the sense of impact while subtly reinforcing narrative pacing. Music also signals thematic shifts, guiding audience perception from suspense to reflection or from moral tension to catharsis. Cinematography further enhances the film's narrative and emotional resonance. Lighting is carefully manipulated to symbolize thematic contrasts. Harsh, industrial lighting in criminal environments reflects danger, moral ambiguity, and tension, while softer, warmer lighting in domestic or construction scenes represent safety, moral clarity, and human connection. The use of shadows, silhouettes, and color temperature accentuates the psychological undertones of scenes, such as the moral darkness of the trafficking network versus Levon's ethical engagement. Camera angles emphasize character power dynamics. Low angles highlight Levon's dominance in confrontations, while high angles convey vulnerability in victims or depict the enormity of the criminal network. Editing plays a critical role in narrative rhythm. Action sequences utilize quick, precise cuts to maintain clarity and intensity, while investigative or suspenseful sequences employ longer takes and tracking shots to immerse viewers in Levon's perspective. Cross-cutting between Levon's actions, the victim's situation, and the movements of antagonists generates suspense and maintains narrative coherence. The timing of cuts, pacing of scenes, and juxtaposition of visual and auditory elements collectively contribute to tension, emotional engagement, and storytelling efficiency. Production design and set construction further reinforce the cinematic experience. Industrial locations, warehouses, office spaces, and urban streets are meticulously detailed to reflect both realism and narrative function. Each environment serves as a tactical arena for Levon's operations while visually representing thematic contrasts, moral chaos versus human resilience, vulnerability versus strategic control. Props are utilized not only functionally but narratively. Tools, machinery, and structural elements become extensions of character skill, ethical choice, and narrative tension. Visual effects, while sparing, are integrated to enhance realism rather than spectacle. Explosions, mechanical malfunctions, or environmental hazards are rendered with attention to physical plausibility, maintaining immersion. The filmmakers prioritize practical effects wherever possible, ensuring that the audience perceives the stakes as tangible and immediate. In combination, fight choreography, sound design, editing, score, cinematography, and production design converge to create a cohesive cinematic experience. The technical execution reinforces the story's emotional depth, ethical dilemmas, and character arcs. Each sequence, whether an intimate emotional beat, a stealth investigation, or a high-stakes confrontation, is meticulously crafted to maintain tension, advance the plot, and enhance thematic resonance. The technical sophistication of A Working Man ensures that viewers are not merely passive observers of action but are fully immersed in Levon Cade's moral, emotional, and physical journey. The film opens in a quiet, sunlit construction site, where Levon Cade methodically moves among steel beams and cement mixers. Every gesture is precise. He measures angles with practiced efficiency, tightens bolts with mechanical rhythm, and checks the structural integrity of a support beam with both care and instinct. The opening sequence establishes not only his physical capability but also the mental discipline that defines him. The camera lingers on his hands, calloused yet steady, symbolizing the duality of his existence, a man capable of violence, yet seeking creation and stability. His interactions with the crew are brief but respectful, communicating leadership and competence without dominance. Through these small moments, the audience immediately perceives Levon's internal control and the calmness he has cultivated, setting up a sharp contrast with the chaos to come. Meanwhile, Joe Garcia oversees the sight, occasionally glancing at Levon with a mix of respect and familial concern. Dialogue between the two is sparse, often conveyed through gestures or subtle remarks. Joe says, "You've got an eye for detail, Levon. Makes me feel like this place is in good hands," to which Levon responds with a short nod, a quiet acknowledgement of trust and mutual understanding. These moments, though brief, establish the deep bond between them, which later becomes central to the narrative's emotional stakes. The filmmakers use naturalistic lighting and soft ambient sounds, birds, wind, distant city noises, to underscore the tranquility of Levon's current life, making the impending disruption feel sharper and more jarring. Jenny Garcia enters the scene, carrying a small notebook and sketching structural designs. She teases Levon lightly about precision, noting, "You measure twice, cut once. I wonder if that's a life motto too." Levon offers a faint smile but remains reserved, illustrating his protective but distant role in her life. The audience immediately recognizes her intelligence, curiosity, and courage, traits that will later influence the narrative and her ability to contribute to her own rescue. Her characterization is subtle, conveyed through expression, posture, and dialogue, ensuring that she is more than a mere plot device. The first hint of danger comes in an innocuous moment. A delivery truck arrives late in the afternoon, and Levon's attention is drawn to subtle irregularities, a vehicle circling the block, the driver pausing unnaturally long. These details foreshadow the kidnapping without overt exposition. Cinematography emphasizes shadows, reflective surfaces, and background movement, creating an underlying tension. Levon's scanning of the environment is meticulous. The camera alternates between close-ups of his eyes and wide shots of the street, allowing viewers to inhabit his perspective, anticipating threat as he does. This meticulous build-up exemplifies the film's methodical approach to suspense. The kidnapping itself is orchestrated with precision, heightening tension without resorting to gratuitous spectacle. Jenny is lured away under the pretense of a delivery issue. The perpetrators use timing, misdirection, and environmental control to isolate her. The sequence is intercut with Levon's growing awareness. He notices her absence, discovers clues, a partially open door, footprints, a dropped notebook, and pieces together the event. These cross-cutting shots maintain suspense while demonstrating Levon's analytic mind. The filmmakers intentionally slow down moments of realization to give the audience time to process the danger and Levon's response strategy. Once the threat is identified, Levon begins assembling intelligence. He observes known associates, canvasses the neighborhood, and evaluates potential exit points. He uses simple tools creatively, mirrors to see around corners, improvised tripwires, and discrete cameras positioned in hidden locations. Each technique demonstrates practical ingenuity and reinforces his reliance on strategy over sheer force. The editing emphasizes spatial awareness. Quick cuts show multiple perspectives simultaneously, while slower shots highlight Levon's contemplation and internal decision-making. Music shifts subtly to a low, tension-building score, signaling the transition from routine life to crisis mode. Minor characters, such as street vendors, neighbors, and construction workers, serve dual purposes. They provide realism to the urban environment and contribute to the narrative by offering Levon small bits of information or assistance. These interactions are carefully written to feel organic. For example, a vendor mentions seeing a suspicious vehicle near the old warehouse, a detail Levon notes without revealing his full plan. These exchanges enrich the world building and illustrate Levon's observational skills, highlighting that his success relies not only on physical prowess but also on perception, deduction, and social awareness. The infiltration of the kidnapper's hideout is executed in multiple phases. Levon moves through poorly lit warehouses, abandoned factories, and narrow alleyways. Each space is carefully designed to create tension, cluttered environments provide both cover and obstacles, forcing him to adapt quickly. Action choreography emphasizes realism, combat is efficient, functional, and responsive to immediate threats. When confronted by adversaries, Levon uses leverage, momentum, and tactical strikes rather than brute force alone. The camera captures close-ups of his calculated movements, slow-motion sequences accentuate critical strikes, and diegetic sounds, the clang of metal, footsteps, and labored breathing, create immersive intensity. Jenny's resourcefulness emerges here as well. She notices weaknesses in her captor's routines, exploits brief lapses in attention, and communicates subtle cues to Levon, enhancing the audience's engagement and demonstrating her agency. Dialogue between them, often whispered or gestured, conveys urgency and emotional stakes. The interplay of their actions reinforces trust, collaboration, and the human stakes behind the physical conflict, elevating the tension beyond a simple action set piece. As Levon delves deeper into the criminal network, the film intricately portrays his investigative process. He begins to identify key figures in the hierarchy, mapping connections between low-level operatives and high-ranking organizers. This process involves careful observation, covert surveillance, and analytical reasoning, emphasizing Levon's reliance on intellect as much as his physical abilities. Unlike traditional action films that prioritize constant combat, a working man devotes significant narrative space to the protagonist's strategic planning, showing him devising approaches to neutralize threats and rescue the innocent. Each decision Levon makes is depicted as a balance between moral responsibility, tactical advantage, and potential consequences, reinforcing the film's exploration of ethical complexity within a violent environment. The narrative also introduces secondary antagonists whose personalities, behaviors, and methods contrast sharply with Levon's ethical code. Some are opportunistic enforcers, motivated by profit or fear, others demonstrate a cold, systematic approach to human exploitation. These characters serve as foils to Levon, highlighting the moral and cognitive contrasts between protagonist and adversary. The interplay of strategy and morality is central to the tension, as Levon must anticipate not only the physical capabilities of these criminals but also their psychological tendencies. The film often depicts these interactions with subtlety, showing that understanding human behavior can be as decisive as direct confrontation. Levon's protective instincts toward Jenny Garcia continue to serve as a narrative anchor. Her vulnerability and dependence on him amplify the stakes and deepen the moral weight of his decisions. Moments that depict his interactions with her, even indirectly, are layered with tension, as the audience is constantly aware of the risks involved. Concurrently, the film highlights Levon's relationship with his daughter Mary, reinforcing the personal stakes of his journey. Through these dual relationships, the film contrasts immediate threats to an innocent life with the long-term responsibility of raising and protecting a child, showcasing different dimensions of Levon's moral and emotional obligations. The story escalates as Levon infiltrates multiple locations associated with the criminal network. Each setting, be it a warehouse, a logistics hub, or a secluded safe house, is meticulously designed to reflect both realism and narrative tension. The environments are depicted with attention to detail, conveying operational precision on the part of the criminals and strategic adaptation on the part of Levon. These sequences emphasize observation, patience, and tactical ingenuity rather than reliance on constant combat. Levon's interventions are precise, targeting key threats while minimizing unnecessary risk to innocent individuals. The film uses these sequences to maintain suspense and showcase the intellectual demands of ethical action within a dangerous context. Throughout these sequences, Levon faces repeated ethical dilemmas. Decisions regarding timing, method of engagement, and risk management all carry moral consequences. The narrative emphasizes that even well-intentioned actions can have unintended repercussions, forcing Levon to weigh his choices carefully. The tension between urgency and deliberation is a recurring motif, highlighting the difficulty of navigating morally ambiguous situations while attempting to protect the vulnerable. This thematic focus differentiates a working man from action films that prioritize spectacle over moral or strategic consideration. As the narrative builds toward the climax, the film increasingly juxtaposes Levon's external challenges with his internal reflection. Flashbacks to previous operations, personal losses, and moments of trauma provide context for his ethical framework and decision-making. These sequences are interwoven with ongoing investigative work, showing that Levon's strategies are informed not only by skill but also by experience, foresight, and a deeply ingrained sense of responsibility. The film effectively balances tension-filled sequences with quieter, introspective moments, giving depth to both the narrative and the central character. The antagonist hierarchy becomes increasingly visible as Levon identifies principal organizers within the human trafficking network. Each confrontation is structured to demonstrate the interplay of strategy, psychology, and ethical judgment. Some antagonists attempt manipulation or negotiation, creating scenarios in which brute force is not the most effective solution. These moments underscore Levon's reliance on intellect and moral clarity, showing that heroism in this narrative is defined as much by cognitive skill and foresight as by physical action. The film uses these sequences to heighten suspense while maintaining thematic cohesion. Secondary characters continue to provide emotional and ethical context. Joe Garcia represents stability, loyalty, and moral guidance, while Jenny serves as the immediate catalyst for Levon's intervention. Minor characters within the criminal network illustrate the spectrum of motivation in human behavior, from fear-driven obedience to calculated exploitation. Through these interactions, the narrative examines broader questions of responsibility, justice, and the cost of action. The juxtaposition of these characters' motives with Levon's ethical framework reinforces the thematic exploration of morality in complex situations. By the midpoint of the film, Levon has established a comprehensive understanding of the network, identified vulnerabilities, and begun a coordinated series of interventions. Each operation is depicted with attention to planning, timing, and consequence, emphasizing the cognitive and ethical dimensions of his work. The narrative maintains tension by presenting unpredictable obstacles, forcing Levon to adapt while adhering to his moral principles. The careful construction of these sequences ensures that suspense is maintained without relying solely on violent spectacle, reinforcing the film's commitment to strategic and ethical storytelling. Following the resolution of Victor Kane's compound, the narrative shifts into the final sequences that consolidate both character arcs and thematic threads. Levon Cade's actions have immediate consequences, but the film emphasizes that the work is never fully complete. After the rescue, Levon assists law enforcement and social workers in securing and rehabilitating victims. Maria Torres, portrayed by Noemi Gonzalez, is instrumental in this process, coordinating counseling, medical attention, and safe housing for those affected. The film gives these sequences ample screen time, ensuring that the audience understands the lasting human impact of Levon's heroism. These quieter, restorative moments contrast sharply with the high-octane action, highlighting the film's thematic balance between adrenaline and empathy, chaos and moral order. Levon's interactions with Detective Sofia Ramirez continue to illustrate the intersection of personal initiative and systemic authority. Their dialogue is measured yet tense, underscoring the challenges of operating within institutional constraints. Sofia's character arc shows growth. Initially constrained by bureaucracy, she gradually recognizes the necessity of strategic flexibility and collaboration with unconventional actors like Levon. Their evolving partnership emphasizes the theme that moral courage can complement, rather than contradict, legal and procedural frameworks. The film also explores the personal consequences of Levon's actions. He experiences physical exhaustion, psychological strain, and moral reflection throughout the narrative, depicted through close-up shots, subdued lighting, and reflective monologues. These sequences humanize the action hero archetype, depicting him as a fully realized individual with vulnerabilities, regrets, and ethical dilemmas. Flashbacks to Levon's Black Ops past are interspersed, revealing formative missions, losses, and moral challenges that inform his present decisions. By integrating these sequences, the film underscores the continuity of experience and the moral weight of past actions on present behavior. Secondary antagonists, including Alexei, are given nuanced resolutions. Alexei's ambiguous morality is explored through scenes of internal conflict and forced loyalty. Levon's interactions with him reveal the ethical complexity of survival within a criminal hierarchy. Ultimately, Alexei's decisions reflect the possibility of redemption and the gray areas of ethical responsibility. The film refrains from oversimplification, portraying even minor characters with motivations, fears, and agency, which deepens the narrative realism. Every action sequence is carefully crafted to maintain narrative clarity while maximizing tension. In one sequence, Levon intercepts a secondary trafficker operation using a combination of stealth, improvisation, and tactical combat. The scene utilizes urban rooftops, alleyways, and abandoned industrial zones, blending environmental elements into the choreography. The cinematography shifts fluidly between wide establishing shots, tight close-ups, and dynamic handheld perspectives, creating a sense of immediacy and immersion. Practical effects and stunt work reinforce realism, punches connect with visible impact, improvised weapons are grounded in plausibility, and environmental hazards are used logically rather than theatrically. Dialogue throughout the film supports both character development and thematic exploration. Minimalist exchanges convey strategic thinking, emotional stakes, and moral deliberation. For example, Levon's sparse but pointed exchanges with Kane emphasize ethical boundaries, tactical foresight, and psychological resilience. The script balances tension and exposition, ensuring that the audience remains engaged while understanding narrative stakes and character motivations. From a production standpoint, A Working Man exemplifies meticulous craftsmanship. Locations were carefully selected to reflect both urban realism and criminal underworld aesthetics. The construction sites, warehouses, and city streets serve as both narrative and symbolic spaces, emphasizing labor, resilience, and danger. Lighting design distinguishes safe spaces from threat zones, with warm tones for domestic or civilian areas and cold, muted palettes for criminal or morally ambiguous environments. The stunt team coordinated intricate fight sequences that utilized practical effects, environmental hazards, and choreography aligned with narrative logic. Cinematography employed both static and mobile techniques to convey scale, tension, and intimacy, while sound design integrated ambient noise, punctuated silences, and musical scoring to manipulate pacing and emotional impact. Costume design reinforced character identities, from Levon's understated work clothing symbolizing grounded heroism to Kane's menacing attire reflecting power and moral corruption. The film's themes resonate beyond the immediate narrative. Heroism is portrayed as a combination of skill, moral clarity, empathy, and decisive action. Ethical responsibility is central. Levon acts not for glory or reward but from an internalized sense of duty. The narrative emphasizes that one person can make a tangible difference, yet it acknowledges systemic limitations, illustrating the persistent challenge of combating organized crime and societal corruption. Secondary characters reinforce these themes, showing moral struggle, resilience, and the potential for both redemption and ethical compromise. Critically, A Working Man was lauded for its realistic action sequences, nuanced character development, and ethical depth. Jason Statham's performance received particular acclaim, portraying Levon Cade as both physically capable and morally contemplative. Reviewers highlighted the film's meticulous production design, choreography, and cinematography, praising its grounded depiction of violence and strategy. Some critiques pointed to conventional action thriller elements, such as revenge-driven motivation and predictable pacing in certain sequences, but the layered character arcs, moral exploration, and realistic fight choreography distinguished it from standard genre fare. Audience response was similarly positive, with emphasis on the emotional weight of the rescue narrative, the realism of the combat sequences, and the moral complexity of characters. Fans appreciated the balance between action and reflection, noting that the film engages both the adrenaline-driven and intellectual aspects of storytelling. Social media discussions frequently highlighted Levon Cade's archetype as the working man hero, ordinary in occupation yet extraordinary in courage, skill, and moral judgment. Financially, the film performed strongly. Opening weekend box office exceeded projections, with subsequent weeks showing steady attendance. Its release strategy, combining theatrical distribution with streaming platforms, ensured continued audience engagement. International markets responded favorably, particularly where action thriller narratives with moral complexity are in demand. The film's financial success reflects both its entertainment value and its resonance with audiences seeking grounded, morally engaged action cinema. Production insights reveal the filmmaker's commitment to authenticity. Combat sequences were rehearsed extensively to ensure safety and realism, and practical effects minimized reliance on CGI. Location scouting emphasized urban and industrial spaces that contribute narrative and symbolic weight. Cinematographers worked closely with stunt coordinators to align camera angles with physical choreography, ensuring clarity and immersion. Editing choices balanced pacing, tension, and narrative clarity, allowing high-intensity sequences to unfold without disorientation. The score and sound design were integrated to reinforce thematic undertones and emotional beats, creating a cohesive audiovisual experience. Philosophically, the film explores the interplay between individual agency and systemic structures. Levon Cade exemplifies the ethical, ordinary hero. He operates outside the system yet complements it, highlighting the potential for personal courage to address moral and societal challenges. Secondary characters illustrate the complexities of survival, morality, and redemption within corrupt systems, providing contrast and depth. The narrative suggests that heroism is not defined solely by physical action but by ethical judgment, strategic thinking, and empathetic engagement. The film's final scenes offer both closure and reflection. Levon returns to construction work, symbolizing the persistence of ordinary life amidst extraordinary circumstances. Victims are placed in safe environments, reflecting ongoing societal care and ethical responsibility. Detective Sofia Ramirez continues her law enforcement work, integrating lessons learned from collaboration with Levon. Alexei's survival hints at the possibility of personal growth, emphasizing moral complexity. The resolution underscores that while individual actions can affect change, systemic issues remain, reflecting realism and thematic sophistication. In conclusion, A Working Man is a masterful integration of action, character, and ethical narrative. It blends realistic combat, strategic heroism, and layered storytelling to create an immersive cinematic experience. Jason Statham's portrayal of Levon Cade anchors the narrative, balancing intensity with introspection. Secondary characters, subplots, and thematic exploration enrich the story, while production design, cinematography, sound, and editing ensure both technical and narrative excellence. Financially and critically successful, the film resonates with audiences and critics alike, offering a grounded, morally engaged action thriller that entertains while provoking reflection on heroism, ethics, and human resilience. It exemplifies how action cinema can combine adrenaline-driven sequences with philosophical and emotional depth, presenting a hero who is as compelling morally as he is physically. Upon its theatrical release on March 28, 2025, A Working Man quickly garnered attention from both critics and audiences, generating a mix of acclaim and discussion centered on its unique combination of intense action and morally grounded storytelling. Critics widely praised Jason Statham's portrayal of Levon Cade, noting that he delivered more than the expected physical performance. Statham's nuanced depiction of a man grappling with past trauma, moral responsibility, and the urgency of saving innocent lives elevated the film above standard action fare. Reviewers highlighted his ability to balance ferocity with subtle emotional expression. Quick, decisive combat sequences contrasted with reflective moments that conveyed guilt, loyalty, and ethical commitment. Critics repeatedly cited this depth as a distinguishing factor, noting that Levon Cade is arguably one of Statham's most fully realized characters, blending physicality with psychological complexity. The supporting cast also received recognition for their contributions to the film's emotional and narrative depth. Michael Pena's portrayal of Joe Garcia was praised for conveying authenticity, empathy, and moral steadfastness, offering a counterbalance to Levon's physical and strategic prowess. David Harbour's nuanced depiction of a mid-level antagonist added realism and moral ambiguity to the criminal network, while Jason Fleming's role as the mastermind was lauded for providing a sophisticated, cerebral foil to Levon. Critics emphasized that these supporting performances were integral to grounding the high-stakes action in human emotion and thematic resonance. The interplay between hero, villains, and victims reinforced narrative tension while exploring ethical and social dimensions of human trafficking and systemic corruption. Audience reception mirrored critical perspectives but added additional layers of appreciation, particularly for the film's pacing, action choreography, and emotional beats. Fans of traditional action cinema praised the realistic and dynamic fight sequences, noting the blend of hand-to-hand combat, improvised weapon use, and strategic intelligence as a refreshing departure from overly stylized or CGI-heavy combat. Viewers also expressed appreciation for the moral dimension of the film, highlighting that the stakes were not merely physical but ethical, emphasizing Levon's loyalty, strategic foresight, and protective instincts. Social media and fan forums reflected discussions about the film's handling of sensitive subjects such as human trafficking, applauding the filmmakers for integrating these issues without trivializing them or diminishing the intensity of the action narrative. From a box office perspective, A Working Man performed strongly, grossing approximately $98 million worldwide against a production budget of $40 million. In the United States, the film benefited from the draw of a well-known action star, a compelling marketing campaign, and positive early reviews that emphasized both the excitement of the action and the film's emotional depth. Internationally, the film resonated across diverse markets, in part due to universal themes of loyalty, justice, and protection of the innocent, as well as the accessibility of action-driven storytelling. Its commercial performance, surpassing twice the production budget, reflects both the effectiveness of marketing strategies and the broad appeal of a narrative that balances visceral excitement with moral engagement. Critically, the film prompted discussions regarding the intersection of genre and social commentary. Analysts noted that A Working Man achieves a balance between entertainment and ethical inquiry, encouraging viewers to consider the responsibilities of individual action in confronting systemic injustice. The depiction of human trafficking, while intense and emotionally challenging, sparked conversations about awareness, advocacy, and societal complicity, further enhancing the film's cultural impact. Educational and social commentary articles referenced the film as an example of how mainstream cinema can integrate real-world issues without sacrificing narrative momentum or audience engagement. Culturally, the film reinforced the relevance of action cinema as a vehicle for exploring ethical dilemmas and personal responsibility. Levon Cade's journey from a man seeking peace to an active agent of justice provided a model of ethical heroism grounded in humanistic values. Themes of loyalty, redemption, and moral courage resonated with audiences, generating discussions not only about cinematic technique and storytelling but also about personal and societal ethics. The film's depiction of consequences, both for protagonists and victims, underscored the interconnectedness of action, morality, and societal structures, offering a nuanced exploration of heroism beyond the conventional one-man army trope. The critical and audience engagement with A Working Man also extended to its technical accomplishments. Cinematography, editing, and sound design were highlighted as contributing to immersive storytelling, with specific praise for sequences that blended strategic combat, suspenseful investigation, and emotional intimacy. Reviews noted that the integration of practical effects, realistic choreography, and dynamic camera work created a sense of authenticity that heightened both the stakes and the viewer's emotional connection. Critics emphasized that these technical achievements reinforced narrative clarity, ensuring that high-intensity sequences advanced the plot and deepened character arcs rather than existing purely for spectacle. In terms of awards and recognition, while A Working Man was not primarily positioned as an awards-oriented film, its innovative integration of social issues into the action genre earned acknowledgement from industry commentators and niche award circuits. Discussions in trade publications highlighted the film as an example of contemporary action cinema that successfully merges thrilling spectacle with ethical inquiry. The film's reception, therefore, spans commercial success, critical appreciation, audience engagement, and cultural discourse, reflecting a multifaceted impact that extends beyond box office numbers. Finally, A Working Man leaves a lasting impression due to its careful balancing of narrative, technical execution, and thematic ambition. By integrating strong character development, morally charged action, sophisticated cinematography, and emotionally resonant storytelling, the film offers a layered viewing experience. Its treatment of systemic injustice, loyalty, and redemption provides audiences with ethical reflection, while its technical achievements and dynamic action sequences satisfy the expectations of genre enthusiasts. In doing so, the film exemplifies the potential of action cinema to engage viewers on both visceral and intellectual levels, setting a benchmark for subsequent narratives that aim to combine intensity, moral depth, and cinematic craftsmanship. A Working Man is a gripping English-language action thriller that follows Levon Cade, a former Black Ops soldier who seeks a quiet life as a construction worker but is drawn back into violence when his boss's daughter, Jenny Garcia, is kidnapped by a sophisticated human trafficking network. Directed by David Ayer and starring Jason Statham, the film combines intense, realistic action sequences with layered character development, exploring themes of heroism, moral responsibility, and ethical complexity. Levon's pursuit of the traffickers is meticulously planned and executed, blending stealth, tactical combat, and improvisation, while supporting characters like Detective Sofia Ramirez, social worker Maria Torres, and Mentor Gunny provide narrative depth and explore the challenges of institutional and personal morality. Secondary antagonists, including Victor Kane and Alexei, are portrayed with nuanced motivations, highlighting the gray areas of criminality and survival. The cinematography, lighting, sound design, and practical stunts emphasize realism and immersion, with contrasting visual and auditory cues distinguishing safety, danger, and moral tension. Flashbacks to Levon's military past provide context for his skills and moral compass, while quieter, reflective moments humanize the protagonist and underscore the emotional stakes. The climactic confrontation at Kane's compound resolves the central conflict through strategic combat and ethical decisiveness, culminating in the rescue of Jenny and other victims, though the film realistically acknowledges that systemic criminality persists. The resolution balances emotional closure with ongoing vigilance, as Levon returns to ordinary life while maintaining moral and physical readiness. Critically, the film was praised for Statham's performance, action choreography, and moral complexity, while financially it performed strongly both domestically and internationally. Ultimately, A Working Man merges adrenaline-fueled action with philosophical depth, portraying an ordinary man whose courage, intelligence, and ethical clarity allow him to confront extraordinary dangers, offering a compelling meditation on heroism, resilience, and the interplay between individual agency and systemic challenges. Levon's approach to the rescue is deliberate, structured into multiple phases that reflect his tactical brilliance and psychological preparation. The first phase involves reconnaissance. He surveys the perimeter of the industrial complex where Jenny is held, noting guards' routines, security cameras, and entry points. Cinematography accentuates Levon's perspective with close-up shots of his eyes, hands adjusting binoculars, and fingers tracing floor plans, immersing the audience in his analytical process. Background noise, a distant forklift, dripping water, the hum of fluorescent lights, heightens tension while emphasizing the isolation of the environment. Here, the filmmakers balance suspense with exposition. No dialogue is needed to convey the stakes, as Levon's meticulous planning communicates urgency and intelligence. The second phase is infiltration. Levon moves under the cover of shadows, avoiding detection by guards who patrol systematically but predictably. He uses his environment strategically. Crates provide concealment, narrow hallways channel adversaries into predictable paths, and reflective surfaces allow him to monitor threats around corners. Each move is choreographed to maximize realism, with attention to how an experienced operative would navigate space. Slow-motion sequences punctuate critical moments, catching a falling object mid-air, flipping over a railing to avoid detection, while diegetic sound emphasizes realism over cinematic exaggeration. Levon's encounters with minor adversaries are precise and efficient. A guard emerges unexpectedly from a storage closet. Levon neutralizes him silently with a chokehold. The camera captures every movement in measured detail, hand placement, pressure, leverage, and timing. No exaggeration is present. The scene demonstrates Levon's expertise without resorting to over-the-top violence. Each subdued opponent increases tension, as the audience realizes that any mistake could alert the more formidable antagonists awaiting deeper within the complex. Meanwhile, Jenny demonstrates intelligence and initiative. She notices a structural weakness in the warehouse, a poorly reinforced door, and marks it subtly, leaving visual cues for Levon. Dialogue is minimal but impactful. She whispers, "This way," guiding him past a blind spot. These moments reinforce her agency and the collaborative dynamic between rescuer and rescued, emphasizing that the success of the mission depends on their synergy. The audience feels both her vulnerability and her courage, heightening emotional engagement. As Levon progresses deeper into the complex, the narrative introduces mid-level antagonists, experienced operatives loyal to the trafficking ring. These adversaries are not mere cannon fodder, they anticipate Levon's tactics and attempt to set traps. Here, the film blends psychological warfare with physical confrontation. One operative attempts to flank Levon using environmental misdirection, but Levon predicts the movement, using a combination of martial skill and spatial awareness to neutralize the threat. Dialogue, often terse and measured, punctuates the tension. You think you know the layout. You don't know me, Levon mutters, signaling both confidence and warning. The antagonist's subsequent hesitation underscores Levon's strategic advantage. The climax of this multi-stage operation is a confrontation with the ringleader and his elite guards. The filmmakers designed the space to maximize suspense, a cavernous warehouse with elevated catwalks, stacks of crates, and shadowed corners. Levon must navigate vertically as well as horizontally, balancing speed with stealth. Cinematic techniques, tracking shots, over-the-shoulder perspectives, and alternating focus between Levon and his adversaries, create a palpable tension. The fight sequences integrate close-quarters combat, firearms, and improvised weapons, all choreographed for realism. Each strike has consequences. A misstep risks alerting additional guards, harming Jenny, or compromising the mission. Moral dilemmas permeate these confrontations. Levon faces situations where lethal force could save Jenny but risk collateral damage. He hesitates at moments, calculating options, demonstrating that his actions are guided not by impulsive rage but ethical consideration. These pauses allow viewers to connect emotionally with Levon's humanity and the stakes involved. The dialogue reflects these moral calculations. At one point, Levon mutters to himself, "There has to be a way without hurting the wrong people," illustrating his commitment to a personal code despite the chaos surrounding him. Jenny's role continues to evolve during the climax. She observes guard patterns, unlocks doors, and even disables a makeshift alarm system, contributing actively to her own rescue. Her intelligence and courage highlight themes of empowerment and resilience, making the narrative emotionally resonant. The collaboration between her and Levon emphasizes trust and communication, reinforcing the human connection at the story's core amid the adrenaline-fueled action. After the climactic battle, the ringleader is subdued in a scene that balances satisfaction with realism. Levon disarms, restrains, and confronts him, eliciting information that ensures the dismantling of the trafficking network. Dialogue here is deliberate. The antagonist taunts Levon about the moral cost of his actions, to which Levon responds with calm resolve, underscoring the ethical complexity of the narrative. The camera lingers on both characters' expressions, capturing the weight of decisions, the exhaustion, and the psychological toll of prolonged violence. The resolution is intimate and reflective. Jenny is reunited with her father, Joe Garcia, who expresses both relief and gratitude. Their interactions are emotionally grounded. Joe embraces Levon, acknowledging the personal and physical risks undertaken. Jenny, though safe, shows the lingering impact of trauma, her courage and growth juxtaposed with the ordeal she endured. Levon, now physically and emotionally spent, retreats from the immediate limelight, returning to a quieter existence, though irrevocably changed by the mission. The narrative emphasizes that heroism entails sacrifice, ethical compromise, and personal cost. From a production perspective, the filmmaker's choices enhance the narrative impact. Cinematography highlights contrasts between light and shadow, using color grading to delineate safety versus danger, calm versus chaos. Editing emphasizes pacing, balancing rapid sequences with reflective pauses, allowing the audience to experience suspense and emotional resonance. The musical score adapts dynamically. Subdued strings and low-frequency tones accompany investigative and tense moments, while percussion and brass accentuate combat sequences. Set design and props reinforce realism. crates, machinery, and urban infrastructure are functional and integrated into action choreography, emphasizing authenticity. Reception and cultural context further enrich the narrative. Critics have noted the balance of realistic action and moral complexity, while some have cited familiar revenge thriller structures as predictable. Audience responses highlight appreciation for character depth, ethical dilemmas, and suspenseful execution. The film engages with contemporary concerns about human trafficking, corruption, and the responsibilities of power, offering both entertainment and reflective commentary. Marketing emphasized the synergy between Statham's physicality and Ayer's directorial style, framing the film as a thoughtful, high-intensity thriller. As Levon proceeds through his mission, the complexity of the human trafficking network becomes increasingly apparent. He encounters layers of deception, communication codes, and contingency measures that highlight the sophistication of the criminal organization. The narrative emphasizes the challenge of confronting a system that operates with internal discipline, hierarchy, and protection from law enforcement oversight, suggesting a moral and strategic struggle beyond simple physical confrontation. Levon's careful observations, reconnaissance, and analytical thinking demonstrate the intellectual demands placed on a hero whose ethics are inseparable from his effectiveness. Each action is deliberate, reflecting both the urgency of the rescue and the weight of potential consequences. The film frequently intersperses moments of quiet reflection to illustrate Levon's psychological state. Scenes of him reviewing intelligence, quietly observing trafficker movements, or interacting with his daughter Mary provide insight into his internal balance between strategic calculation and emotional grounding. These sequences emphasize that his choices are informed not only by tactical expertise but also by a deep personal moral code. By juxtaposing the high-stakes external challenges with these introspective moments, the film creates a narrative rhythm that reinforces Levon's duality as a disciplined operative and a caring parent. Levon's interactions with minor antagonists reveal layers of motivation and moral ambiguity. Some characters act out of self-interest, while others operate under coercion or fear. The narrative highlights these differences, illustrating that even within a criminal organization, human behavior is multifaceted. Levon's strategies are adjusted based on these nuances. He assesses each situation individually, weighing risk, potential harm, and the most ethical approach to intervention. These sequences maintain tension while deepening thematic exploration, reinforcing that strategic heroism requires both cognitive insight and ethical discernment. The stakes rise as Levon identifies the higher-level orchestrators within the trafficking network. These individuals maintain operational control through intimidation, secrecy, and manipulation, forcing Levon to approach each encounter with careful planning. The film emphasizes that direct confrontation is often insufficient. Success requires strategic infiltration, observation, and psychological insight. Scenes in warehouses, logistics hubs, and secluded locations demonstrate this approach, showing how Levon uses both environmental awareness and human intuition to navigate dangerous situations. The narrative balances suspense with ethical reflection, illustrating the careful judgment required when protecting innocent lives while confronting organized wrongdoing. Parallel to the external tension, the film explores Levon's internal struggle. Flashbacks to previous military operations, moments of personal loss, and interactions with his daughter Mary provide insight into his ethical framework and emotional resilience. These sequences reveal that Levon's sense of duty extends beyond tactical efficiency. He is motivated by loyalty, responsibility, and an unwavering commitment to protect the vulnerable. This internal perspective deepens audience engagement, presenting a hero whose strength is measured not only by skill but also by moral conviction. The film builds suspense through a series of calculated interventions, each escalating in complexity. Levon navigates surveillance measures, identifies weaknesses in security systems, and anticipates reactions from both traffickers and law enforcement. The narrative consistently emphasizes that success is not guaranteed. Setbacks and surprises require adaptation and improvisation. These sequences highlight the cognitive demands of action, reinforcing the film's central theme that heroism involves both intellect and ethics. Tension is maintained by showing the consequences of delayed or miscalculated actions, keeping the audience engaged while reflecting the moral gravity of Levon's mission. Character dynamics continue to provide emotional resonance. Joe Garcia embodies the stability, loyalty, and ethical grounding that contrast with the chaos of the criminal underworld. Jenny represents the immediate stakes, motivating Levon's interventions and highlighting the moral imperative to act decisively. Secondary characters, including minor operatives within the trafficking network, serve to illustrate the spectrum of human behavior and motivation, reinforcing the complexity of ethical decision-making in dangerous environments. The interplay of these characters enriches the narrative and strengthens thematic exploration. As the story approaches the climax, Levon's strategies converge in a coordinated effort to dismantle key components of the trafficking network. The film presents these operations with a focus on intelligence, timing, and consequence, rather than gratuitous spectacle. Each move is calculated to maximize protection of the innocent while minimizing unnecessary risk. The narrative underscores that effective intervention requires a combination of skill, ethical judgment, and psychological insight, reinforcing the film's unique approach to action storytelling. Through these sequences, the audience witnesses Levon's growth and adaptability. Challenges that initially seem insurmountable are overcome through observation, planning, and judicious application of skill. Ethical dilemmas continue to punctuate his journey, forcing him to weigh the value of immediate action against potential long-term consequences. The narrative emphasizes that moral courage is inseparable from strategic intelligence, and that heroism involves careful consideration, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. By integrating psychological depth, strategic planning, and ethical reflection with high-stakes plot progression, A Working Man maintains narrative tension while exploring broader themes. The juxtaposition of ordinary life and extraordinary responsibility reinforces the film's central motif of duality. Levon's quiet moments with Mary and his observation of everyday routines contrast with the intensity of his interventions, illustrating that heroism is as much about moral decision-making and responsibility as it is about physical capability. The narrative presents a nuanced exploration of courage, consequence, and the ethical dimensions of action, distinguishing it from conventional action thriller narratives. A Working Man is as much a psychological and moral exploration as it is an action thriller. At its core, the film examines the tension between past experience, ethical responsibility, and personal redemption, using Levon Cade's journey as a lens through which broader societal questions are explored. Levon embodies the duality of human existence, the interplay between strength and vulnerability, decisiveness and reflection, action and moral contemplation. From the outset, Levon is presented as a man attempting to reconcile his violent past with the desire for a peaceful life. The juxtaposition of construction work with covert operations underscores the psychological tension inherent in his character. He seeks normalcy but cannot ignore injustice when confronted with it. This internal conflict drives the narrative, ensuring that every external action, the strategic infiltration, hand-to-hand combat, and hostage rescue, is informed by ethical reasoning and personal morality. Loyalty emerges as one of the most persistent and nuanced themes. Levon's bond with Joe Garcia and his daughter is portrayed as more than simple duty, it is an ethical commitment that transcends legal obligations and professional training. The film illustrates how loyalty can act as both motivation and ethical compass, shaping decisions in high-stakes situations. Throughout the narrative, Levon repeatedly evaluates the balance between immediate action and long-term consequences, demonstrating that loyalty is not blind obedience but deliberate choice grounded in moral clarity. Scenes where Levon risks exposure or personal harm to ensure the safety of innocent individuals highlight the moral gravity of loyalty, framing it as both a human and ethical imperative rather than a narrative convenience. Redemption is another central thematic pillar, intricately tied to Levon's psychological arc. His past is marred by violence, morally ambiguous missions, and the necessity of survival in extreme circumstances. The narrative presents redemption not as abstract penance but as active, ethical engagement with the world. Every combat sequence, infiltration, and strategic decision functions as a moral test. Levon's goal is not merely to defeat antagonists but to protect and restore lives endangered by systemic criminality. This framing emphasizes the psychological realism of redemption, the recognition of past failures and the conscious choice to act ethically in the present. Scenes of reflection, quiet observation, and restrained action underscore that redemption is a process requiring both emotional intelligence and moral discipline. Justice, both personal and systemic, permeates the film's narrative. Levon's confrontations with antagonists illustrate the complexity of achieving justice in a morally compromised environment. Fleming's character, representing organized criminality and systemic corruption, provides an ideological foil. He challenges Levon to consider the broader implications of his actions, including collateral consequences and the limits of individual power. These interactions transform action sequences into moral and philosophical exercises. Each fight, escape, or tactical maneuver is imbued with ethical significance, highlighting that true justice in the world of a working man is contingent on strategic insight, moral integrity, and the protection of vulnerable individuals rather than mere retribution. The psychological depth of supporting characters reinforces these themes. Joe Garcia's fatherly concern, moral consistency, and ethical courage mirror and contrast with Levon's past and present struggles. His decisions, whether to intervene, seek help, or place trust in Levon, illustrate the multifaceted nature of moral responsibility within ordinary life. The kidnapped daughter, as an intelligent and resourceful character, exemplifies resilience in the face of victimization. Her agency in critical scenes underlines that ethical action involves empowering others rather than acting solely through physical force. Meanwhile, antagonists such as David Harbour's and Jason Fleming's characters are depicted with psychological complexity. Harbour's mid-level operative demonstrates occasional doubt and internal conflict, while Fleming's mastermind embodies calculated immorality and ideological rationalization. The interplay between these psychological profiles provides a rich tapestry of human behavior and moral tension. Decision-making under pressure is another thematic focus. The narrative frequently situates Levon in scenarios where ethical choices are not straightforward. For example, he must weigh immediate rescue against potential risks to multiple hostages, balance stealth with direct engagement, and reconcile personal safety with moral duty. These moments of ethical calculus are amplified through cinematic techniques, tight close-ups on Levon's expressions, slowed sequences emphasizing thought processes, and auditory cues that highlight tension. Such portrayals ensure that the audience perceives action as morally informed, not purely instinctual or sensational. The repeated emphasis on cognitive and ethical deliberation reinforces the film's commitment to exploring moral responsibility as a central aspect of heroism. The interplay of external and internal conflict is crucial to thematic depth. Physical confrontations, high-stakes infiltration, and combat sequences are consistently mirrored by Levon's psychological struggle, fear, doubt, past trauma, and ethical evaluation. This duality allows the audience to engage simultaneously with visceral excitement and moral reflection. Cinematic techniques support this integration. Lighting contrasts reflect psychological states, e.g., shadows during moments of doubt, warm illumination during ethical affirmation, camera angles underscore power dynamics, and the score modulates intensity to align with emotional tension. The result is a narrative that operates on multiple levels, encouraging both intellectual engagement and emotional investment. Themes of resilience and human agency are further explored through narrative consequences. Successes and failures carry weight, the survival of hostages, the defeat of antagonists, and the dismantling of trafficking networks are achieved through skill, ethical reasoning, and strategic decision-making. Conversely, missteps or underestimated threats result in tangible setbacks, reinforcing the narrative's moral realism. This approach emphasizes that heroism is not infallible, ethical action requires vigilance, foresight, and constant assessment of consequences. The film's consistent attention to realistic stakes ensures that audience engagement extends beyond spectacle to consideration of ethical complexity. Ultimately, A Working Man presents a nuanced exploration of heroism, ethics, and human resilience. Levon Cade's journey embodies the integration of moral clarity, tactical skill, and emotional intelligence. His actions demonstrate that ethical heroism involves both physical courage and conscientious moral decision-making, requiring awareness of consequences, prioritization of innocent lives, and strategic thinking in the face of systemic corruption. Supporting characters, psychological depth, and thematic consistency reinforce the message that human agency, loyalty, and redemption are intertwined with ethical engagement in a complex, morally ambiguous world. By intertwining action, psychology, and morality, the film offers viewers an experience that is thrilling, emotionally resonant, and intellectually compelling. After the climactic confrontation and successful rescue of Jenny Garcia, the narrative transitions into a sequence of reflection, recovery, and consequence. The filmmakers deliberately slow the pace, shifting from the adrenaline-charged sequences of infiltration and combat to quieter, more introspective moments. The warehouse, once a place of high-stakes danger, now stands silent, its shadows serving as a visual reminder of the moral and psychological toll of violence. Levon Cade moves methodically, checking that the adversaries are restrained and that the environment is secure. Each movement is purposeful, emphasizing the disciplined mindset that guided his actions throughout the mission. The camera lingers on discarded objects, overturned crates, and traces of the struggle, conveying the real-world consequences of the confrontation rather than sanitizing the aftermath. Levon and Jenny exit the warehouse under cover of darkness, the cityscape sprawling before them. Cinematography captures a contrast between the urban environment's inherent danger and the promise of safety in the distance. Ambient sounds, the distant hum of traffic, soft wind, and occasional sirens, provide a grounded realism to the scene, reinforcing that the mission's resolution does not erase the complex, ongoing threats of the world outside. Jenny, visibly exhausted but resolute, clings to Levon for support, both physically and emotionally. Their dialogue is sparse yet poignant. "Thank you, for everything," she whispers, acknowledging not only the physical rescue but also the protective, moral guidance Levon has provided. Levon's response, a quiet nod, his eyes scanning the horizon, communicates relief, responsibility, and the knowledge that the battle may be over, but vigilance remains essential. The return to Joe Garcia's home provides a setting for emotional resolution. The father-daughter reunion is depicted with realism and restraint. The filmmakers avoid melodrama, instead focusing on subtle expressions, physical gestures, and the unspoken bond forged through crisis. Joe embraces Jenny tightly, then turns to Levon with a mixture of gratitude and recognition of the personal risk he undertook. Dialogue conveys depth. "You saved her. I don't know how to repay you," Joe says, his voice tinged with both relief and awe. Levon's reply, understated yet weighted with sincerity, "Just keep her safe." "That's enough," underscores the moral compass guiding his actions throughout the film. These interactions cement the narrative's emotional core, demonstrating that heroism is measured not by accolades, but by the protection of those unable to protect themselves. The film then examines Levon's psychological state post-mission. Flashbacks of prior missions, moments of hesitation during the rescue, and the sight of injured adversaries provide insight into the cumulative toll of violence. Cinematic techniques, soft focus, muted color palettes, and slowed editing, signal a shift from external action to internal reflection. The audience witnesses Levon grappling with guilt, moral ambiguity, and the realization that even successful interventions leave lingering consequences. These sequences reinforce one of the film's central themes, the cost of violence, both on the practitioner and on society. Levon's quiet contemplation on a rooftop, overlooking the city he both protects and navigates morally, serves as a visual metaphor for his dual existence, capable of extraordinary action, yet striving for ordinary life. Supporting characters also experience resolution. Jenny demonstrates growth, transitioning from vulnerability to agency. Her bravery during the rescue, combined with her intelligence and quick thinking, establishes her as a fully realized character. She internalizes lessons of courage, trust, and resilience, while Joe Garcia embodies gratitude, paternal care, and ethical reflection. Minor antagonists face justice or apprehension, their fates depicted realistically to reinforce the narrative's grounding in consequence. These intertwined arcs ensure the story concludes cohesively, emphasizing human complexity and moral intricacy rather than offering simplistic closure. From a thematic perspective, A Working Man consistently engages with issues of morality, justice, and personal responsibility. Levon's choices demonstrate that skill alone is insufficient, ethical discernment, foresight, and adherence to a personal moral code are paramount. The narrative repeatedly interrogates the limits of action. When is violence justified? What are the consequences of intervention, and how does one balance personal ethics against pragmatic necessity? Symbolism is layered throughout the film. Shadows represent moral ambiguity, elevated structures like scaffolding signify both strategic advantage and the precariousness of safety, and recurring visual motifs, such as hands constructing or manipulating objects, highlight creation versus destruction. The production's technical execution reinforces thematic depth. Director David Ayer emphasizes realism, blending practical stunts, authentic combat choreography, and immersive set design. Locations were chosen for authenticity, from urban streetscapes to industrial complexes, ensuring environmental believability. Cinematographer Robert Elswit uses lighting to demarcate zones of safety, threat, and moral tension. The score, composed by Lorne Balfe, adapts to narrative shifts, blending low-frequency tension cues with subdued, reflective passages to enhance psychological impact. Editing by Fred Raskin maintains rhythm, juxtaposing rapid action with quiet introspection to balance emotional resonance and suspense. Costume and prop design further support realism. Utilitarian clothing, functional gear, and carefully curated environmental elements immerse the audience fully in Levon's world. Behind-the-scenes insights reveal deliberate artistic choices. Statham and Ayer collaborated closely on combat sequences, emphasizing efficiency, technique, and ethical restraint over gratuitous spectacle. Actors underwent extensive physical training and tactical rehearsals to ensure authenticity, while the production team meticulously coordinated choreography with camera movement to maintain continuity and realism. Marketing emphasized this synergy, highlighting Statham's physicality and the film's moral complexity, positioning A Working Man as an action thriller that engages both emotionally and intellectually. Trailers and promotional materials showcased both high-stakes action and character-driven drama, appealing to fans of adrenaline-driven cinema and viewers seeking narrative depth. Critically, the film received mixed to favorable reception. Rotten Tomatoes indicated an approval rating of roughly 47%, citing Statham's compelling performance, realistic action, and thematic ambition as strengths, while noting occasional predictability in plot structure. Metacritic scored it approximately 52 out of 100, reflecting similar observations. Audience response skewed more positive, with particular appreciation for Levon's moral complexity, the realistic depiction of action, and Jenny's active, courageous role. Cultural analysis highlights the film's engagement with issues such as human trafficking, systemic corruption, and ethical responsibility, situating it within broader societal discourse. It has been used as a reference point in discussions of how action cinema can address contemporary moral dilemmas while maintaining engagement and entertainment value. The narrative concludes with Levon returning to his disciplined, measured life, now irrevocably altered by the events he endured. The city around him remains unchanged on the surface, yet the psychological and moral stakes underscore the ongoing complexity of human existence. By blending intense action, character depth, and ethical exploration, A Working Man delivers a cinematic experience that is both thrilling and thought-provoking. Its meticulous balance of realism, psychological insight, and thematic engagement elevates it beyond conventional action thrillers, creating a film that resonates with audiences seeking both adrenaline and reflection. In summary, A Working Man is a comprehensive exploration of heroism, morality, and consequence. Through Levon Cade, the film examines how discipline, intelligence, and ethical reflection intersect in high-stakes environments. Supporting characters, realistic antagonists, and multi-layered action sequences provide narrative richness, while production choices enhance immersion and credibility. The ethical dilemmas, visual symbolism, and psychological depth invite audiences to reflect on the nature of power, responsibility, and human resilience. With meticulous attention to detail, character development, and thematic coherence, A Working Man establishes itself as a notable contemporary action thriller, leaving a lasting impression on viewers and contributing meaningfully to discussions of morality and justice in cinematic storytelling. As the story moves toward its climax, Levon consolidates his intelligence and prepares for the decisive operations that will determine the outcome of his mission. By this point, he has mapped nearly the entire human trafficking network, identified the key orchestrators, and uncovered patterns that allow him to anticipate their movements. The narrative emphasizes the culmination of his careful planning, showing that his success relies not only on physical skill but also on foresight, patience, and moral clarity. These sequences build tension incrementally, creating a sense of inevitability while maintaining suspense. Every detail, timing, positioning, and coordination, is critical, reflecting the film's thematic commitment to strategy and ethical decision-making. Levon's interventions in the final sequences are presented as the product of layered tactical thinking. He simultaneously protects Jenny, neutralizes threats, and disrupts the infrastructure of the trafficking operation. Each movement is precise, and the film highlights his ability to adapt when unexpected obstacles arise. The criminal antagonists, now fully aware of his presence, attempt countermeasures, creating a dynamic interplay of action and strategy. These encounters reinforce the narrative's assertion that intelligence, observation, and ethical judgment are as essential as physical capability in achieving moral and practical objectives. The film uses these sequences to sustain tension while emphasizing that heroism involves measured action, responsibility, and accountability. Throughout the climax, Levon's moral code is continually tested. The narrative shows that even decisive, successful interventions carry consequences, both practical and ethical. He is forced to make choices where the timing, method, or collateral impact could have profound implications. By illustrating these dilemmas, the film reinforces the central theme that action, even morally justified action, requires consideration, sacrifice, and acceptance of potential costs. This emphasis on consequence distinguishes A Working Man from more conventional action films that prioritize spectacle over reflective engagement. Parallel to the external conflict, the film continues to explore Levon's internal landscape. His reflections on past experiences, his interactions with his daughter Mary, and the trust he places in Joe Garcia provide emotional grounding amid the tension. These moments demonstrate that his motivations extend beyond immediate duty, they are rooted in loyalty, ethical commitment, and the responsibility of protecting the vulnerable. The narrative contrasts these quieter, introspective scenes with the intensity of the climax, reinforcing the film's exploration of duality, the coexistence of ordinary life and extraordinary moral and physical responsibility. Secondary characters maintain their thematic roles as well. Joe represents stability, ethical guidance, and the human need for trust, while Jenny embodies vulnerability and moral urgency.